Right, so well, already a number of things were said about the WIP in George already. He made both our presentations with Jerry, so I'll see what I can add on on top of this. So, right, so WGCM infrastructure panel and priorities for CMIP6. So here I'm really the, loudspeaker. No, I'm speaking on behalf of Carl and Balaji, who are the co-chairs. Right, so the three bits I want to share with you. First is what is the, what are the infrastructure implications for climate modeling infrastructure? It's all nice to have all these great CMIP, but behind there's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to happen. And tell you a bit more about the role of the WIP, what it does, what it doesn't do, and what's coming up in the next years. And I guess the main message that I want you to keep from that presentation is the WIP is here has two roles. One is to make sure that what is technically needed for CMIP6 is written somewhere in interaction with the groups, and that's clearly organized, and from the end to the end process. So it's quite overseeing that. And it's the second one, it's just as important, is to keep an eye on the longer term issues. In those ESGF or other processes go into huge development process with a lot of public money. How do we ensure that what is developed is serving the community need on the longer term, just also looking at the other MIPS. So that's right. Right, so this we said, we saw already, so WGCM oversees the CMIP panel and now the WIP, the new infrastructure panel. So as I was saying, it's, is that, no, which one is the, yeah. So it's responsible for the technical details, data standards, software infrastructure, etc., that are serving the CMIP, needed for the CMIP. So we've seen that before, the deck, that's the new view of how this should evolve between the different CMIPs and the deck keeping the, and we should really, the ambition is that coming alongside in the deck in that nice path, the infrastructure should be there as well. It should follow across the different CMIPs, not evolve, not have radical changes from one to the other, because that's really a problem, but still evolve. That's right. The timeline, we just had a discussion, so I won't go into those again. Right. So I think that, I don't know if it's George or Jerry made the point, is that the modeling group and GCM have concerns and suggestions regarding the infrastructure, because they're devoting so much resources to participating. They want to minimize their efforts and adopt similar, similar standards here, both in data requirements, in many aspects. And as far as possible, rely on common infrastructure, both software and IT. This is really, today we're all mostly solving the same problem in our different institutions. We're all doing climate modeling and distributing data. We have 30 groups, 30 ways of doing. There's absolutely no reason why we should do it differently. The science should be done. We should have the diversity in the science and the way we approach the problem, but the infrastructure, there's no, maybe, there might be 2 or 3 choices, but that shouldn't be up to the groups to decide what those 2 choices are. It should be a community effort. Right, there's also a very important aspect, which is the documentation of what we're doing. Again, as researchers in climate, we don't like to document what we're doing. We know what we're doing. Everybody should trust us. And I think that being in public scrutiny more and more, we have a responsibility to document all what we're doing. Not only how the models are developed, but how the data is made, if there was a bug, and all that, the forcings. So this is really something that is, I mean, when we do it in CMIP5, a lot of people screamed because of that revolution, and for good reasons. It's a real change of doing things, and so we're going to continue in that, change things, but it's really important we continue doing, properly documenting. And of course, there's no way doing it in 10 different ways. We should have a standard way of doing that. Right, so there were some suggestions coming from the modeling groups. So communicate plans and expectation at every stage and as early as possible, so groups can, adapt to whatever's coming. Documenting all operational procedures, release schedule for the SGF. I won't go into the story of the SGF. A lot of you have heard the details. It was also a painful process for the community and for many groups. So it's to avoid this is really to take that reverse, not have, a few people developing the technology impose that on the community, but rather the community imposing their needs on what should be developed technically. It's not always easy, but that's how we should be driven. Right, and also, because these softwares have releases, they become operational software, part of local suites in all the groups, so they have to have clear release schedules and all those, the professional environment that goes with those softwares. And that's a challenge. Right. So what are the activities that need to be coordinated within the WIP and for CMIP? Well, so there's ESGF, which is the data archiving and delivery mechanism. So I'm sure pretty much all of you know about it and have had good or bad experiences, but certain experiences with it. So this is really the backbone of CMIP, and it needs to evolve. Then there's the cog, which is a web interface to the MIP and the MIP data. This is going to be, and some of you already experienced it, our common way of the one-shop portal for all the CMIP-related activities, both science and technical. And this is a software that needs to be developed and coordinated to serve the needs. Then there's the ESDoc group, which is about the model and experiment documentation, so documenting the models, the forcing of the experiments. The CMOR, which is the rewriter that you put at the end of the model to produce the standard data, and basically which will feed both the data and the documentation. So these softwares and infrastructure are developed by their own groups, and they need to be coordinated. And that's the role of the WIP, is to make sure that their requirements are aligned and have the schedule and all fit. So that's really important, and it's a challenge. But we're making progress. Other activities is to liaise with the conventions. CF convention is an example. The data reference syntax, quality assurance software. So there's a number of additional bits that are really important that also needs to be coordinated with everything. So it's and
do all of these things have timelines?
Oh yeah, all those things have timelines. Right. Well, if I go in every single of them, it's the goal of the WIP is to make sure the timelines are compatible, and because they all have their own schedule and developments that are not necessarily CMIP related or CMIP6 related, we make sure that they all have a schedule that fits the CMIP6 schedule. That's really, for example, to discuss one I know better, the ESDoc. We know we have to have a documentation process ready well before the first runs, which at the end of this year. So we factor that in, and given the amount of people we have working on ESDoc, we know what we can do and what we cannot do. We'll keep things for maybe a later stage. So it's really a lot of basically all these, the development path of all this is highly tied to CMIP6, which it should be. And the WIP is there to make sure that happens.
I seem to recollect there was going to be a website. Is that not true?
Yeah. There's a website. It's a COG website. So there's already quite a lot of information there. Right. So quickly, the purpose of the infrastructure: ensure all model outputs can be easily ingested and analyzed by scientists. That's really important. Facilitate access to model output. Make available information to interpret the model output. So experiment details, QC and the documentation, control quality and errata. This is really important because we all run into a model that has reversed the east and west wind stress sign. I won't give names. We spend, when the standard is respected, our analysis takes 2 minutes. When it's not respected, it takes 2 weeks. So this is really important that all these, and we can do much better on the quality check. We've already done things, and now for the CMIP6, it's going to be even better. there are a number of things we can automate and go back to the group and say, sorry, I'm refusing that data to publish that data because of such, and such. So this is really progressing. Yeah, so the documentation, user statistics, etc. Yeah, so again, as I was saying, it's really, without CMIP, and already every group would do it differently, and there's no reason. Plus, if we use the same infrastructure, we can share our resources. This is costly, this is expensive, and right. So the key design infrastructure requirements reduce demands placed on CMIP panels and PCMDI. Historically, PCMDI was doing all this. For CMIP3, was basically only PCMDI doing this. CMIP5, it started to be spread out. I mean, ESGF was spread out. CMIP6 is going to be even more. And now PCMDI is becoming actually a smaller part of all the infrastructure effort, which it should be. And there's no reason it should rely on just one institute. So it still has a central role historically and in terms of expertise, which is real, but in terms of actual development effort. Right, so clearly communicate with scientists. Yeah, and those developing the modeling infrastructure, maintaining the modeling infrastructure, better communication. So a lot is about communication. So websites, meetings, emails, this is really has to flow and be informed. So this is why the WIP was there. I mean, basically a CMIP panel could not handle all this by itself. So a specific WIP was formed. Right, so its terms of reference is to promote a robust and sustainable global data infrastructure in support of the WGCM scientific mission. Okay, but I think every word is important here, is that again, the infrastructure should serve the science, not the latest exciting authentication technology. Well, that's it. Right, so establish standards, this is really important. We realize the more and more we go into the tools, okay, there can be several tools. Standards, you can only have one. So this is really where we should focus the effort. And in many of those, the standards like CF or the model documentation or other things, this is really important. This is standard. Right. So and these standards need to evolve, of course, with the needs. It's not there have to be versions, and we have to oversee this. Review and provide guidance on the requirements of the infrastructure. So again, what level of service, accessibility, level of security? Do you want a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service or not? I mean, these are requirements that need to be discussed. Right. So oversee all these standards and protocols, and I won't go into the details here, but a number of really important aspects to look at. So the progress, so the WIP was established in 2013 following a session of the WGCM. And last year, so basically now the WIP is 1 year old. And yeah, there was a plan presented to WCRP and endorsed last June. We've met a few times via teleconferences. We have that website, which you can go. And there are 4 white papers under preparation. Okay, these are the members. So we have Balaji and so we try to get representativeness of the different groups, but also of expertise. It's always a challenge making those things, but so it's the first cut, and this will go like the other panels with evolving membership and etc. So, but it's relying on many more people, of course. Right. So we have 4 position papers, which are those 4 here. This is my last slide. So. Protocol documents for the endorsed MIPS. So this is that thing that was shown by George and Jerry, is basically all what you should follow and what it translates into technical requirements. So when you're proposing a MIP, you might need some data, you might need some frequency of output, etc. So this should be organized clearly. So there's a whole form there that you fill up. Another very important aspect is the data access policy. A huge, well, I have to remain politically correct. One of the big hiccups with ESGF last time around was that some groups wanted their data to be public and some groups didn't want to. So we went into very fancy and complex authentication procedure. And now what we propose is completely reversing. It's just very simple authentication, and the license of the data is with the data. So you give the groups will decide how they want the data to be used, and this will be with the data file. So that basically how the right to use the data or what you can do with it will not rely on the infrastructure anymore, which is like, whew, it's a big hurdle. Less. So those kind of things that we can propose and work. So that's being proposed at the moment. Data citations, this is an important one, how we can cite the data, not only the papers, but the CMIP data, the number of reasons to, dividing some DOIs or some kind of unique identifier of the data that you could list at the end of your paper or make a link somewhere. And then, of course, if you do the citation, you have to link with the data, with the documentation, etc., with the QC, with a number of things that could connect all those together. Strategies for managing the growth of the CMIP data volume. This is a really important one. Already from CMIP3 to CMIP5, we went from a centralized database to distributed, but still people were downloading data, and there were a lot of dark repositories. We all have our own CMIP5 repository in our institute, which was duplicating the others. And so when you do that, you lose all the benefit of the common infrastructure because you don't have the update, you don't have so one reason was when you're doing post-processing, accessing with your software remote data is an issue. So improving the server end processing of the data. So next to the archive, you have a computer that can do your extraction and data analysis for you. And that's basically, you don't have to move the data around anymore. So that's really something that is being trying to develop. There are some groups, some data archive centers already developing such things. So that's really also, and it has a lot of technical implications, of course. Right, and also as I was saying, so the responsible for the technical specification for the CMIP5 data request. So really, as I was saying, to start with, the WIP task was both, giving detailed short-term recommendations, and this is where the WIP comes in. Please follow that. If you don't, it's going to, mess up things for a lot of people. And also have a longer-term, forward-looking evolution of all this infrastructure, which is really, it's a big, and we're doing that with very little means. So we have to be really careful where we put the effort and put it intelligently. So this is hard to get funding for those things. They are like a bit in the shadow, but all our science relies on it. It's crucial. It is crucial. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Okay, quick questions, John.
My question concerns the historical forcing and who's responsible for it, not so much in terms of the provision to the modeling groups, but to scientists. And I'm thinking here of the forcing data itself, references to it, and especially important, uncertainties that are involved in the forcing data.
So that's not a question for the WIP, that's a question for CMIP panel. So Jerry has to answer.
Your question about the forcing data?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so you saw that list of all the data that's being produced, right? So the hope is that all of those data will be documented, and everybody will know what forcing data is there. But there's always this tension between emissions and concentrations, right? So there's more models that now can handle emissions. So now you're even less comparable because each model will refuse emissions and you get different concentrations. So that's probably going to get worse.
Are there people thinking about it here?
Oh yeah. But there's no way you can order some modeling group to say, okay, you've developed a prognostic aerosol scheme, yank it out of there and use the specified aerosols we're going to give you. They're just not going to do it. So you kind of have to take that into account. This drives the detection attribution people nuts, as you know, because they would like each model to use exactly the same forcing, but it's really not practically possible. But you can document what each group does, and that's the best way.
That's why there was a big discussion about modeling centers documenting the actual forcing,
Yeah.
which was not part of CMIP5. And there was a big difficulty to actually figure out what kind of forcing the model.
Yeah, it was a part of CMIP5, but it was made in a way that the modeling groups never got to it.
No, it was an extremely strong recommendation / requirement.
Yeah.
And none of the modeling groups did it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of mix. Okay, so how will the system deal with all these MIPs? And also, what will the user do? So there will be a certificate. At some point, a user from, say, Lamont, it's not a modeling center, they wants to look at Decadal issue. How will they be able to handle the fact that they want to look at all these component A, component B, component C experiments? They have to get permission.
Well, what you will do is,
where it resides,
No. yeah. So you'll ask for an account to access the ESGF, which will be available for, anybody really. You have to register.
For a certain cost, it will be no, I'm joking.
No. It's free. And then when you're in the system, there's documentation and navigation. You find what you want. There's and then there you have the data, and you download the data, or
Or you use it offline. I mean, you cannot own sitting on the
So
network of communication. You don't have to actually download it.
Well, that's the point I was making here. Is some nodes, as we call them for ESGF, will have a processing power next to it, so that you can go there, install your own software, and use the data locally. You don't have to download it to your institute and use your own computer to do the post-processing. But we'll see how far we go in CMIP6. I know, for example, BADC is already having, with the Jasmine system in the UK, already has such a system working, where basically they install for you a virtual machine, which is exactly what you like, and you're working there, and you have a big pipe to the data sitting there, and you don't have to download it anymore, and that's working well.
So, basic level right now, people have to download.
Of course, but I think we should, as a community, we should go more and more toward those systems, because the volumes of data are just going to be unmanageable, and it's, for example, at the University in Paris 6, we have 50,000 students, 10,000 researchers. IPSL is using 85% of the bandwidth of the university. I mean, we're not going to be able to do that for very long. We told them, it's for IPCC, but if we keep on doing that, there's going to be a problem. So we will have to find a solution.
Okay, we're going to keep moving, but yes.
Yeah, so what sort of interaction is the WIP going to have with kind of the secondary infrastructure for data storage and delivery that's more oriented towards the user community and impacts research community? So, for instance, in the United States, there's the Bureau of Reclamation has a portal for downloading CMIP3 and CMIP5, which is a lot more user-friendly than the SGF. And so many kind of people that are going to be using this more for applications are never going to interact directly with the SGF. Is there kind of any sense of how to support that infrastructure, or at least kind of streamline the WIP efforts with that secondary set of
Well, these are what I call the dark repositories. I mean, the one you just described is a dark repository. We cannot avoid that there will be dark repositories. If people want to download have a big enough disk and big enough pipe, they want to download all the data on their own server. Okay, I don't see what really the point is. I mean, but the practical issues. Now, what you can do, and there are already groups doing that, is that you can provide a path to the actual ESGF server. So ESGF, you have to distinguish the actual storage of the data and the access to it. Clearly, initially there was the point-click point in ESGF, which was a total nightmare, and then it became possible to wget script to do that. So if you have a software interface that will use those wget for you, fine. It's really a service that will be provided for the community, but hooking to the low levels of ESGF. So I think this is the way forward there. So.
Okay, last question.
So in terms of the design protocol document, have you received input from this group on this, or what do you need from this group?
I think, yes, we've received things. There was that double axis, but I guess what you have to remember is that a number of requirements are coming directly to those different groups. And for example, clearly for Seymour, the requirement of being able to output the double axis, and also for the documentation, the time axis, having the actual time and the lead time, which we need here. So this is a requirement that is coming. So those requirements are being fed in different ways, and we have to make sure that they are coherent. That if we develop the double axis for this and this, it will be handled by this as well. So I don't know about exactly what this is at the moment, because I'm not following that in detail, but I know it's on the list of things.
There's no question to this group right now that you use it, or is there?
Well, I guess, we've heard a number of things already. If there are new, requirements, but I don't think, we've heard the number already.
One of my questions is, if let's say someone wanted to start producing data tomorrow, I don't know how ready.
Oh, nothing's ready.
When is it going to be ready?
By the end of this year.
The end of this year. Okay, you heard him.
The goal is to actually in terms of the software bits, this will be the end of this year. The documentation we hope to be ready before, so that the groups can prepare for that, because this is not the model and well, to some extent the experiments are not so much depending on the exact details of the protocol.
But presumably the WIP is circulating questionnaires and so forth to participating groups.
Yeah, this has happened already and will continue. But
okay, well, thank you very much. We do have to.